Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits, plugging away in the summer heat, back to deliver another podcast with more of the same through your headphones, earbuds, or speakers as I get into all that's happening in the world of sports, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with your host, JAYREELZ. For my first-timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, or even as early as this past Monday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And yes, if you hear a bit of a different background than normal, it's because I'm sitting under a couple of palm trees. It is currently 9:54 a.m. on a Thursday, which I usually record these podcasts, but because I am in sunny Florida and it is about 83, 84 degrees, thankfully it's not brutally hot or suffocating, but I figured let me do a little alfresco. So for those that are watching on YouTube at JAYREELZ and you're wondering, wait a minute, what the hell's in this background? I see a bit of a tree or a fence, whatever. Yes, I'm doing this outdoors. I figured let me try to experiment here with doing a podcast in the elements, my element, which I love the warm weather, the sun, etc. So if you're gonna hear some birds, if you're gonna hear a plane flying above me, it's because I'm recording this outside here in Kissimmee, Florida, where I am a little bit of a sojourn with family, friends, etc., and enjoying it to the utmost. So just because I'm away and not in the friendly confines of my home office in New York City doesn't mean that the podcast gets put on the shelf. Full steam ahead, people. Full-time content creator, doing what I love to do, and this is, by all means, no excuse for me to put up my feet and say, all right, guys, I'll see you when I come back. As I deliver the latest podcast. So let me get right to it. Some quick housekeeping. Of course, OLIPOP, the soda brand that I've been plugging here over the last couple of episodes, and even prior to that, but more so with the promo code JAYREELZ. So if you go to drinkolipop.com, type in JAYREELZ, JAYREELZ, you'll get 15% off your order, and it got some great flavors, people. If you're a classic person, if you like just lemon lime and cola, root beer, cream soda, etc., they got those, but they also have some interesting flavors, especially to quench your thirst on a hot summer day, whether that's watermelon lime, or even one of my favorites, tropical punch, banana cream, strawberry vanilla. They got it all, people, so what are you waiting for? One more time, go to drinkolipop, that's DRINKOLIPOP as in Paul, .com. At checkout, use the code JAYREELZ for 15% off your order. If you could go there, I'll get a kickback of that, so I would sincerely appreciate it. So just some housekeeping to get us underway. Now, with that being said, speaking of underway, the quote-unquote second half of the baseball season will do just that tomorrow. Throughout Major League Baseball, of course, a lot of these teams have played anywhere between 92 to 96 games. I know the Padres have played the most games. They have 99, so they're just one game away from hitting the century mark. And we can look back on the All-Star break. We talked about it a little bit on Monday, how I was not going to get geeked up for this game. And even the home run derby, for that matter, we know Teoscar Hernandez won. Pete Alonso, who has been in the news talking about how he wants to stay and remain a New York Met. Let's see what the front office is going to do. I've talked about that in the past several times. I don't think they're going to trade him before the deadline, considering they currently have the third spot in the National League wild card. They'd be stupid to do so unless they're going to get a boatload of prospects, which we know that's not going to happen, considering that Alonso is in a walk year. They're going to get minimal return, considering he's going to be a rental to whomever's going to trade for him at the deadline. So you could pretty much squash that. And Alonso, who's not having a big year, yes, he does have 19 home runs, about 40 some odd RBIs, but certainly not putting up the numbers he did last year when it was 46, 118. And even though he batted, 218? But the numbers, the power numbers, certainly aren't anything close to what we saw last year. So who knows how that's going to play out. And you know how I feel. You want to keep Alonso there. He's an original Met, homegrown guy. He's going to break all of the big-time offensive numbers for the franchise if he remains in a Met uniform. But what is going to be the cost? And with Scott Boras as his agent, you already know he's going to ask for the sun, moon, stars, and maybe even the entire galaxy for that matter. So how I look at it is what Steve Cohen is going to do. I'm sure he's going to wait. I know he's going to flex his muscles when he can, but is he going to put forth, let's say, 8 years at $200 some odd million? I talked about this on my YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. I had a bit of a short the other day, so if you want to check that just to get a little bit more of a better feeling on that, because I feel like I've belabored this point 100 times over. And then we have the game itself where there's only 3 points in this game to really discuss. The first inning where Soto drew the walk, where Paul Skeens on the mound, the phenom from the Pittsburgh Pirates, to have Aaron Judge come up. A lot of people wanted to see what that matchup was going to be like. And literally 1 pitch in, Judge grounds out to second and gets the force out to close out the inning. And then you had the 3-0 lead by the AL, which was highlighted by the 2-run double by Juan Soto. But then you had Shohei Ohtani hit the 3-run homer over Tanner Houck to tie the game. That was dramatic and certainly had everybody in the stands rise to their feet. And then later on, where Duran, the center fielder for the Red Sox, hit the 2-run homer to have the AL take the lead 5-3, and that's how the game ended. And with Duran being your MVP, that is your All-Star break. There isn't anything else I could add. There isn't anything else I could layer to that. And I understand you can look at some of the interviews on the field. I literally watched about 5 minutes of it. I see David Ortiz talking to Duran, and then he went over to Gunnar Henderson. And the game, like I said, it's not what it once was. And it's interesting, too, because on Tuesday night, which was July 16th, that was actually the 11th anniversary of the 2013 game at Citi Field that I actually went to and had the blessings to go to, thanks to my dear friend Maria Cano, who had tickets. And that game, even with Citi Field, Matt Harvey starting the game, which there was a buzz in the building. David Wright was the starting third baseman who got one of the 3 hits by the National League. And other than Mariano coming out of the bullpen in the 8th inning to enter Sandman, and he was the only player on the field to where both the National and American Leagues gave him his standing ovation and his just due. That was the highlight of that All-Star game. So look at that. 11 years ago, I just gave you pretty much what took place there in that All-Star game. And then in about 90 seconds or 2 minutes, I just told you what the 2024 All-Star game was like. So now that we can put that to rest and move on, how this is shaping up as far as the second half goes is pretty much this. We know that the American League with the divisions, we think it's going to be a wild and crazy one, especially in the AL East and the AL West. And we talked about this on Monday. But how I'm going to look at this from the standpoint of second half angles, to me, how the Mariners are going to right the ship. They've been in first place for quite some time. And with the Astros nipping on their heels, coming back from the dead, and the Rangers kind of laying in the weeds, although they're, 4 games under 500 at the moment, but they are the defending champs. And with Scherzer back in the rotation, who knows if Jacob deGrom's going to come back at any point, and we would think that's going to be the case. But how Seattle's going to manage the second half is going to be intriguing. And I also think the same for the Orioles. And the reason why I bring them up is because although they won the division last year pretty comfortably, but now they're going to have the Yankees nipping at their heels with a huge series in the latter part of the year. In fact, the penultimate series of the regular season, which is going to be enormous, at least we would think as of right this moment. But for the Orioles and what they're going to need to do to bring in another starter to that rotation and maybe some bullpen help, because we know their offense is loaded. But when we take a look at the Orioles and Mariners, 2 teams that don't really know their way around the postseason. Yes, I know the Mariners a couple of years ago when they beat Toronto and they came back from that 8-1 deficit before getting swept by the Astros. And yes, last year, the Orioles with the division win and getting swept by the Texas Rangers in the process. But we want to see if there's going to be any standing with these 2 teams. And we would think that they're going to make the postseason, especially with the Orioles. We know whether they win the division or are a wild card team, they're going to make it and punch their ticket to October. Seattle, on the other hand, who knows? And yes, they are pitching rich. We know their rotation is stacked. But their offense is from hunger. They don't really have a big-time offense. Julio Rodriguez, I don't want to say he's regressing, but certainly hasn't been the offensive threat that we've seen going back a couple of years ago. And you have to wonder whether or not Seattle, similar to Baltimore, are they going to make deals here in order to strengthen their roster, whether it's offensively, bullpen, starting rotation, certainly not for the Mariners, but let's say for Baltimore. That's going to be the one thing I'm going to look at. And then even with the AL Central, can the Twins, and with them winning a division last year, can they be a team that could overtake the Guardians, considering that they've been in first place pretty much for the remainder or for the majority of the first half of the year? And even with the Guardians, without Shane Bieber, and they had to send down guys a la Tristan McKenzie from their rotation to get themselves right down in AAA. And even though their offense, very good, but certainly not a threat when it comes to, let's say, the Orioles and even the Yankees in the AL. And you have to also have to factor in the Astros too, considering their pedigree. So whether or not that the Guardians are going to be able to thwart off the Twins when it's all said and done. And I think that could be an interesting race as the Twins are just 4 games back. That's how the American League is shaping up, because the wild card is pretty much going to be what it is. It's going to be a handful of teams. You're going to have the Royals, the Red Sox, a little bit of Tampa. Houston is part of that wild card mix. It's going to be to a much lesser degree there than it is in the National League. And as far as the NL goes, we know that the East and the West, they are formalities when it comes to the Phillies and Dodgers winning a division. The Central, I would think Milwaukee will hold off St. Louis unless they make a big deal or two at the deadline. But the wild card is just going to be, as I mentioned on Monday, and I'll say it now, it is going to be a battle royale. We might as well throw all those teams into the ring, and whomever's going to come out with the 2 wild card picks, because we think Atlanta's going to be safe and will have the 4th seed in the NL. But as far as those last 2 spots, which are currently occupied by the Cardinals and Mets, then you have a gap between those 2 teams, and then you're looking at San Diego, Cincinnati, San Francisco. You also have to throw in the Cubs. You also have to throw in the Reds too, and the Pirates, because they're all within 3.5 games of the last spot there in the National League. So you have 8 teams that are going to battle it out for 2 spots. And we would think that the teams that could separate themselves, whether it be, let's say, the Mets or the Cardinals or the Padres to a certain extent, because they certainly have resources and maybe they'll make a trade or 2 before the deadline. But it's what the Pirates are going to do. It's what the Reds are going to do to a certain degree, even the Cubs. And we know that they have money, the Ricketts family, but are they going to be able to see if they could plug in a couple of players here to be a part of the wild card race in August and September? And even the San Francisco Giants, where I get it. Historically, they're a team that they're going to make moves. They're going to try to improve their roster. But with them being 3 games under 500, where they'll be, let's say 2 weeks from now, because when we look at the dates, it'll already be August 1st. And the deadline, I believe, is July 30th. So there will be a lot of activity between now and 2 weeks from today when we'll reconnect. And of course, we'll reconnect on Monday and next Thursday. But my point is that are those teams in the National League wild card, are they going to be a factor? The teams that are on the fringe or on the outside looking in, are they going to make moves? Will the Reds even think about possibly making a transaction to improve their club to maybe be a threat in the wild card race? Or even the Pirates, for that matter. We know with Skeens, we know with Mitch Keller, we know with other guys in that rotation that have actually been pretty good and their lineup is decent. Will they bring in a reinforcement to try to say, hey, we're the Pirates and a lot of people are going to leave us left for dead, but let's at least make things interesting in August and September, and why not? They're in the business to win, right? And in the business to compete. Why punt the season away? Why just be sellers or maybe not be as active because who wants to go to Pittsburgh or you want to give up any prospects? I understand that, because it's not as if the Pirates or the Reds or teams like that are going to be threats in the National League when it's all said and done. But you are in the business of entertainment to bring people to the ballpark, to be in a race, to have people come out and be excited about your team, even if, let's say, by Labor Day, you're 7 out from the 6th spot in the wild card, and you can pretty much look forward to 2025. So that's what the second half is going to look like, and how I see it fit. I think from AL to NL, Baltimore and Yankees, to me, that's a coin flip. And we could look at the Oriole roster maybe being a little bit more stable as far as their players go, because Yankee injuries, they're always going to crop up. We know Rizzo, Stanton have been out. Who knows with Judge? I know he's been healthy, but Judge is a toe or an oblique away from being on the IL for about a month. And their rotation, although Cole looks like he's going to try to get back into form, and he's going to start on Friday night against the Rays, well, tomorrow night when the season resumes. And the bullpen of the Yankees, who knows what they're going to do to piecemeal, and you know Cashman has a card or two up his sleeve, but the Oriole roster I think I could trust more because they're younger, they're more athletic, and they are a little bit more healthier. Now the rotation, who knows? They're going to have to bring in somebody from another ball club to go along with Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez, because Dean Kramer is not the answer, and neither is Cole Irvin. So, and also in the back of the bullpen, we know about Craig Kimbrell, and he is obviously, it's like him walking on a tightrope every time he comes into a ninth inning. So for the Orioles, I'm not going to say they're going to thwart off the Yanks, because I can see the Yankees after their doldrums of the last month, maybe they'll start to turn it on here. But I would think overall the last 2.5 months of the season, I'll say the Orioles will win a division, and then the Yankees will be a wild card as a 4 seed. I think the Guardians will do the same over the Twins, although the Twins will be active. I would think as far as the wild card teams are concerned, and they're currently 5th right now in the wild card race. And then out west, Seattle, I don't know if they're going to win a division. I think they'll still be around. I think they'll obviously go down to the very end, but will they make it in as a wild card? Will they win a division? I don't trust them. I trust the Astros more, and to a lesser degree the Rangers, but I don't know if the Rangers are going to have those skids where, yeah, they may get to 500 or a game over, but then they'll lose 5 in a row, and then obviously, not to say that they won't be heard from the rest of the year, but it will be a situation where they're going to be going upstream without a paddle, and then the next thing you know, it's September 15th, and they're 5 games back, and they're going to be out to sea. So I think the Astros, as much as I buried them a month or so ago, I think they're probably going to end up winning a division. Seattle, they'll be hanging around, but I don't know how effective they'll be over the last 2.5 months of the season. And the Rangers, to me, the same, because they haven't gotten out of their own way. They haven't been as prolific as an offense as they were last year. And who knows about the rotation, especially if DeGrom's going to come back. So that's why I'm going to have the Rangers on the outside looking in at the moment. And in the National League, we know it's Phillies, we know it's Dodgers. I think Milwaukee, they'll be able to hang tight and win a division. Now, unless the Cardinals make some big trades here, but I would think the Cardinals, they'll be hovering around in that 5-6 wild card race. I don't know if they're going to catch Atlanta, although I believe, what are they right now? 3.5 games back. Let me pull up the wild card standings. Currently, they are 4 games back, or 3.5, 4 in a loss. So maybe the Braves should be safe there as far as getting that 4th spot and nestling into that position. But then the Mets, let's see what they're going to do. They need bullpen help in the worst way. They could get another starter, although Kodai Senga is on the mend and he's ramping up his workouts. Who knows? Maybe by August 1st we'll see him back, and that will be a huge boost to that rotation, who, let's face it, they've been doing it with smoke and mirrors. I know Severino's had a good year. Sean Manaea's been good. David Peterson, as of late, has been fine. Tyler McGill, hot and cold, but he's hung in there. So if Senga will give them a shot in the arm, that could be a huge boost for the Mets as they try to get themselves into the postseason. As far as the D-backs, I forgot about them. They're a game over. And think about this. The Cardinals, Mets, Diamondbacks, Padres, Pirates, those 5 teams are separated by a game and a half. So that's why you know that this is going to be a fight to the very end for the wild card race. The Diamondbacks, you have to give them respect based on what they did last year. And who knows if they're going to make a deal. I don't think they will, but you never know. Padres, we talked about them. They have the resources and the tools and certainly the talent, but can they get over the hump and get back into the postseason? I think they can, but it's going to be a situation where we got to see what the Cardinals and Mets do, because at least we would think they'll be active. Giants, Reds, Cubs, and Pirates, I think that they will float into oblivion as we get deeper into the season. So I could see it being Cardinals, Mets, Diamondbacks, Padres for those 2 spots when it's all said and done. And listen, I'm not going to predict here that, the Mets are going to make the wild card or the Cardinals or whatever, because this is right now a big giant toss-up. But I think you're going to have those 4 teams battle it out for those last 2 positions, because we know that the Braves are going to be safe, and the same is going to apply in the American League, because whoever comes out of the AL East as a winner, the second place team in that division, they're going to be the top wild card spot. So it's going to be Twins, Red Sox, Royals. I don't know if the Royals are going to hang around. It'd be nice to see them be in the race. I'll say yes, but I could see them in September starting to fade, because this is their first time as an organization, independent race since 2015, and with a lot of young players. And I don't know if the Seth Lugos of the world are going to be able to carry this team through the dog days of August and through Labor Day and into the teeth of a pennant race. Of course, the Astros and even the Rays, I know they're at 500, but they're 5.5 back and 6 in a loss behind the Red Sox, and I'm sure they have some dates left on the calendar throughout the rest of this 2024 season. So how I look at the AL, it's going to be Twins, Red Sox, Astros. I don't know if the Rays are going to have enough, and I don't know if the Royals are going to have enough. So you're looking at 4 teams, or really 3 teams, Twins, Red Sox, Astros. Do I have to say the Rays? I think those 3 teams, maybe the Rays. All right, I'll throw them in just for now. I think those 4 teams will battle it out for the 2 spots, similar to the AL, where Kansas City will fall off. the Tigers, they're 7 back. I'm not even going to include them. And I'm sure they're going to trade maybe their starter, Tarek Skubal, who's an all-star. And who knows where he may end up going, which will be a big boon, whether it be Detroit or whether it be Baltimore, let's say. Will the Orioles kick the tires and they have prospects on having a guy like Skubal be a part of their rotation? I think that would be huge. And it's a guy that still, I believe, has another year under control. So the Tigers could certainly get a nice ransom back for a young pitcher like that. So we'll see. This is how the second half is going to shape up. This is how I look at it from my crystal ball. I don't think all these teams are going to be part of the playoff mix. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to September. You're going to have 3 teams battling it out for the 2 spots. So we will certainly keep my fingers on the pulse and make sure that throughout the rest of the summer, I keep you apprised of everything that's going on in the world of baseball. All right, now I'm going to turn my attention because we have the 4th major as I break out the golf clubs of the golf season, and that is overseas at the Troon Golf Course in Scotland, where you already have a lot of players already into the clubhouse. Of course, with the time difference, you still have players that are out on the course as I start to sweat here. So the sun is now coming over the palm tree, so who knows? Hopefully and I think the camera, everything's looking good. I had to wipe down the lens because that started to fog up for those watching here on YouTube. But as far as the British Open or the Open Championship is concerned, now the weather's going to be a factor, I think more so Saturday, because we know whenever we watch that tournament, it's always gray, it's always blustery. A lot of the players have the long sleeve, not sweatshirts, but they have the long sleeves. Some of them have the windbreakers on, depending on the elements, if it's actually drizzling or raining. But Saturday looks like a day where it's going to be in the low 60s and the percentage of rain is 75%. So that could be a rough day for the golfers on that course. Sunday looks like it's going to be okay, sunny and about mid-60s. Tomorrow's going to be 70 and cloudy. And today, it looks like there may be some rain that could be coming for those who are teeing off. Right about now, it's 10:16 my time, and it's 5 hours ahead, so the 3 o'clock tee-off where it doesn't get dark until well after 9. But what I've seen here so far, that you have a bunch of golfers, and I don't know if it's the course, I don't know if it is the elements. I know it's cloudy, it's gray, there may be some wind. But the leader at the top of the leaderboard, when we take a look at it, is a guy that you are very familiar with. His name is Justin Thomas. He's 3 under at the moment, and you have a handful that are 2 under. So when you think 3 under, it's not as if they're 5, 6, 7, or 8 under. They are 3 under. So it makes you think, wait a minute, what's going on here? Is the course itself bringing these golfers to its knees, or is it the elements? Well, it's not raining as of right this moment, or at least as of right before I started recording, and although rain is expected, but there must be some wind, there must be a situation where the elements are becoming a factor, because the 5 golfers that are at 2 under at the moment, Justin Rose, Alex Noren, Nikolai Holgaard, Russell Henley, and Maverick McNeely. Who? Yeah, golfers that I'm not too familiar with. They're at 2 under. You have another bunch of golfers that are 1 under, but here's what you got here, which is alarming and concerning. A lot of people thought Rory McIlroy, considering his performance off the Scottish Open last week, and with everything that happened at the US Open, his flame out there, and for him, I know he had a press conference earlier this week to kind of unravel that, how he said he's past that, he's over it, he had to take a few days. Even Tiger tried to call him, and I believe he changed his number. So you had that scenario where he kind of left Tiger and put him on ice there for a little bit. But for McIlroy, a lot of people were looking at him coming into this tournament to be a factor. Maybe he could try to at least redeem himself from what happened there last month at the US Open. And what have we seen from Rory? And I have to double check to see what the latest is, but he was on 13 at +5. And he wasn't the only one that was performing that bad, I should say. I was going to say that well. The guy that he went up against, shot for shot, hole by hole at the US Open, a one Bryson DeChambeau, who was the winner just last month, he's at +7. Max Homa, a guy who's usually at the top of the leaderboard, he's at +6. You have Rickie Fowler, Tommy Fleetwood, who usually in the first and second day of these tournaments is always at the top or near the top of the leaderboard. Victor Hovland, Ludwig Åberg, those guys are all at +4. And these are names, like I said, they're usually in contention after a day or two in these major tournaments. And right now at +4, now this is a situation where you have to wonder whether or not these guys are going to play past tomorrow? Are they going to even make the cut? Now, there's still a lot of golf to be played. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can pull up the latest here, because I'm actually using a hotspot, so being out here, it's not a situation where this is going to be on and popping. It actually came up pretty quick. So as I take a look at the current leaderboard, and a lot of these golfers, let's see where Dechambeau is right now, because again, he was at +7 and was not in the clubhouse. Or maybe he was at the time. All right, so now he's at +5. So he did gain 2 strokes, but he's in the clubhouse at +5. Tommy Fleetwood is at +5. Max Homa's at 17 right now, +5. I mean, you have now Rickie Fowler is +6, and he's currently on the 6th hole. So these guys have gotten off to just sluggish starts. And I'm not going to go through the whole list here because I could be here for minutes on end, but this is something that I'm going to be on top of and paying attention to. Definitely check my YouTube channel at JAYREELZ, as I'll be posting shorts, kind of recapping the day's events there at Troon, the golf course there for the Open Championship, otherwise known as the British Open. But right now, it is looking like it's a bloodbath for these players here. And like I mentioned, with Justin Thomas at 3 under, the top of the leaderboard, this could be a situation similar to the U.S. Open, because I believe did DeChambeau end up 8 under for the tournament? This could be a scenario where you may have 8 under or even 5 under could be your winner when it's all said and done. So very interesting developments there happening on the other side of the pond there with the final golf major of 2024. Now, as I turn my attention, let me get to some NFL news and notes as I put on the helmet and shoulder pads, because you have teams that are reporting to camp and a situation where you're going to hear a lot of buzz. And just in the last couple of days, you've heard buzz about 2 wide receivers, one that's asked out, and the other where they had to shoot down rumblings of a possible reunion between quarterback and wide receiver. The first one being Brandon Aiyuk, who has requested a trade from the Niners, a guy who's been a very productive receiver, very good and even underrated. 73 catches, had 1,300 yards, a bunch of touchdowns, a guy that in that offense, even if he were to, let's say, be traded or not be a member of the Niners this year, listen, it would be a huge loss, don't get me wrong, but it's not as if you're losing Jerry Rice. It's not as if you're losing even a guy like Justin Jefferson. And that by any means is not a slight or knock on Brandon Aiyuk. But to me, I think with that offense, the way it's constructed, and obviously with Kyle Shanahan being the offensive mastermind that he is, you could plug me at wide receiver. Yes, am I going to have 1,300 yards and 73 catches? No, but I'm sure that I could get 55, 60 balls, maybe have 8 to 1,000 yards in receiving, and maybe have 7 to 9 touchdowns as opposed to 12 to 14 touchdowns. That's how the offense is loaded and built. Come on, you still have Deebo Samuel, you still have George Kittle, you also have Christian McCaffrey, who catches balls from the backfield. So it's not as if Aiyuk were to be traded, that this is a guy that, oh my goodness, this Niner team is going to go from Super Bowl contention to not even making it as a wild card team. Nonsense. Because the Niners, we all know the way they're built and around that offense is not going to be it's not going to be an enormous loss if Aiyuk were to be traded. Is it going to be significant? Yes, it can be. But because of how Shanahan is going to deploy his talent, and I'm sure there's another guy that they could probably plug in there, and not to say he's going to be as good as, but could be effective and efficient, and certainly health is a huge factor, because we know Deebo Samuel's been out at times over the course of the last few years with injuries, but I think that the Niners would be okay. Now, of course, they refuted and shot down any type of reports about them trading Aiyuk to another team. I know the teams that Aiyuk has requested that he wants to go to is either going to be Washington or Pittsburgh. Now, what they're going to get for him, who knows? They may ask for a 2, a 3, I don't know. I'm just going to go by what the front office of the Niners have said at this moment, where they're not going to trade him. But who knows? Is Aiyuk going to hold out? Is it going to be a situation where he's not going to report? When camp begins, I believe for the Niners, the veterans report at least by this coming Tuesday, if not Wednesday. So this is going to be a soap opera that's going to unfold right in front of our very eyes, whether Aiyuk reports, whether he's going to sit out, whether the Niners are going to blink. So that's something we'll have to keep my eye on as far as how that standoff between player and organization is going to go. And then you also have Davonte Adams, who's also been in the news, how he said that the only other quarterback that he would play for or go to if he wasn't a Raider would be Aaron Rodgers. And then all of a sudden that got dredged up again, where the scenario regarding the former quarterback of the Packers as well as the wide receiver combo tandem, how if Adams is coming out saying that he wants to play with Rodgers again, that must mean that Adams wants out of Las Vegas and jettison him to the Jets. A little wordplay there, although I stumbled and fumbled and bumbled there for a second. But now you have this scenario where a lot of people are thinking Joe Douglas should go after Davonte Adams. Joe Douglas should at least kick the tires to see whether or not they could procure his talents to match him up with the quarterback, as well as Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams, who they brought in from Los Angeles with the Chargers. I think he should inquire about him, but what the cost is going to be a whole hell of a lot different, because remember, I don't know the parameters of the contract for Adams. I don't know what is going to be the stickling point for the Raiders. If it's going to be, we want a number 1 or 2 or this or whatever it is. But how I look at it is, I don't think that the Raiders are going to trade Adams. I don't know if the new regime, and I understand Antonio Pierce was there for the last few games, who replaced Josh McDaniels, and whether or not you're going to have Pierce is going to look at Adams to be like, hey, I want you here. Is he going to stick up for him? I don't know if anybody's gone to Pierce with a microphone to kind of substantiate that, or at least get the approval from the head coach. And he's going to say the right things. He's not going to say, oh, yeah, I want Adams out of here. But I don't think that's going to be much of a story. I think the Aiyuk story is going to be more than Adams, because he's not requesting a trade. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. Watch it be a thing where Adams is going to be disgruntled, or maybe he wants to be reunited with Aaron Rodgers, knowing that the Jets have big-time expectations this year, and it all is going to be predicated on the health of the quarterback. So I don't think that's much to do about anything. So that we'll just have to wait and see. And I just bring that up now because that's been news here over the last couple of days. But I think more so than the Aiyuk scenario, that's really nothing to get crazy about, although I have to bring it up considering that's been in the news the last couple of days. And I didn't mention this the other day, but I know Jamal Adams, speaking of Jets or one-time Jets, signed with Tennessee. I don't know if he signed a one-year deal. I think it was just that. And hasn't been the same player since he tore a quad back in 2021. This guy was an all-pro player with the Jets and obviously a Pro Bowl player during his tenure with New York and then Seattle. But ever since 2021 has not been the impact safety that he was. He set the record for most sacks by a DB, 9.5, and I believe it was the 2020 year. But then with the injuries and just being a guy that hasn't been his Pro Bowl all-pro self, he's getting another shot there in Tennessee. Let's see how that plays out for the one-time All-Pro. And that's what I have with the NFL. I know you're going to hear a lot here over the course of the next few days, as a lot of the teams have their training camps open starting this Thursday as well as the following Wednesday, so the 23rd and 24th. You already had the Ravens, their whole team reported as of yesterday. You had the rookies report there on Saturday, and the rest of the team showed up there yesterday. So I'm sure you're going to get some sound bites there, whether it be from John Harbaugh, even Lamar Jackson, considering what happened there in the AFC Championship game, how they're going to retool, refocus to get themselves back to that position and see if they could gun for a Super Bowl. So that, I will keep my eyes peeled for anything that comes down the pike there. As far as the NBA and NHL, I know you had a couple of deaths as I lace up my high tops, and it seems like there's been nothing but that over the last couple of weeks here. NBA, though, and literally I'm right down the road from not the arena, because that building is no longer constructed. I'm sure they demolished it many years ago, but the new arena, the Amway Center, or whatever it is where the Orlando Magic play, I'm literally right down the road from Orlando. But Pat Williams, the former Orlando Magic executive who was responsible for bringing the franchise to that city, died at the age of 84. So thoughts, prayers, and condolences. He was very instrumental in having the Magic during, I believe it was 88-89, their inaugural season, but in the mid-80s, bringing that team to that region, the only team or only sport in town out of the four majors. So that was huge for the Magic to get that organization, and we know what they've done since then. Obviously, Shaq, Penny, they had the team in 09 make it to a final with Dwight Howard, but since then, trying to piece it together with guys like Paolo Banchero and friends, Wagner and Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, guys like that. Good young team. You would think they're building themselves to a very good future as we get to the latter part of this decade and beyond. But Pat Williams, again, a big, enormous factor in bringing that team to Orlando. Died at the age of 84. Thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to his family, the Magic, the NBA, etc. And then you had Joe Jellybean Bryant, the father of the late, great Kobe Bryant. Died the other day at 69, went to LaSalle University, obviously grew up in the Philly area as a phenom, didn't have the success, nowhere near the success that his son had, but considering from the Philly area, went to LaSalle, like I mentioned, drafted by Golden State, played 4 years with the Sixers there in the mid-70s, certainly not the big-time player that his son was, as I mentioned, but at the same time had a ton of knowledge, ton of wealth that he passed on to his son, and we know what Kobe became of during his time, not only being a high school phenom at Lower Merion outside of Philadelphia, but of course throughout his Laker career. No known cause of his death, but again, 69, way too young. Thoughts, prayers, and condolences go out to the Bryant family. Terrible news as he transitions, and I'm sure somewhere up there he and Kobe have reconnected, and just sad news here over the last few weeks when it comes to a lot of these deaths, whether it be Bill Walton, whether it be Jerry West, Orlando Cepeda, a lot of these people, obviously giants of the sport, and even people who were influential in basketball as they perish and pass away and move on. But for what's happening on the court, I know Kyrie recovering from a broken hand that he suffered while training. Not to be too serious, I think he'd be ready by camp come late September, but that was something that came through the news cycle here over the last 24, 48 hours. So for Kyrie, when I first heard about that, I thought to myself, oh no, was he suffering that injury during the finals as to why he wasn't effective, especially the games in Boston? But knowing that he's been working out this summer and I'm sure wanting to get back to that point with Klay Thompson now on the team to go along with Luka, I'm sure he's doing whatever it takes to get himself right and ready for a long NBA season, which is still not for another 3 months from around this time because the season will probably begin sometime in the middle of October. So we're still a ways away from that. So that's pretty much NBA. And then NHL, a couple of news and notes as I lace up my skates. Evgeny Kuznetsov, the longtime Capital who was traded to the Carolina Hurricanes and had a cup of coffee there, gets out of his deal. He wants to go back home to his native Russia and play in the KHL. So you have Kuznetsov, the Capital who won a cup there in 2018 with his fellow countrymen, and a one Alexander Ovechkin, but now says goodbye to the NHL as he moves back home. So Kuznetsov bids adieu to the NHL. Long-time career. I can't even say if he's a Hall of Famer or not. I know he had some big offensive seasons there with the Capitals, but maybe that's something I'll dig up as we get deeper into the summer and maybe before the start of the regular season. Then you had a couple of signings. The Kings had re-signed their number one pick of 2020 and number 2 overall, and the one Quinton Byfield, a guy that obviously part of that fabric as the Kings, who made it to the postseason this year before losing to the Western Conference champion or the eventual champion, Edmonton Oilers. So for Byfield, let's see, 5 years, $31 million. Good deal for him. I don't know too much about his career, but I know for a guy that's number 2 overall, he hasn't had the numbers that would earn the respect of a number 2 overall pick. But Byfield in the mix, so I'm sure the King fan is happy. And then the Islanders re-signed Simon Holmstrom, a guy who did not put up big numbers, 15 goals, 10 assists in 75 games, signed him to a 1-year deal, no biggie, but is a very good penalty killer, had 5 shorthanded goals, and was a guy that was a threat there, had as many goals as any other player in the league when it comes to being shorthanded, so I guess that's a plus. And I think he's only getting paid $2.3 million, so for 1 year and for a guy that's good on the penalty kill, I guess you're going to take that. But you'd want a little bit more production from him. I get it, he's more of a defensive forward, but still. So that's what you have there with the NHL. And besides that, people, that's what I got. Nothing much else going on. I don't even think there's an MMA bout this week, or even boxing for that matter. I know you have the Olympics, which is a week from tomorrow. I'll unpack that on next week's podcast. I'll certainly massage that a little bit. Now listen, I'm not going to break down who's going to win the pole vault or who's the water polo or even tennis for that matter. I'm not going to get into the basketball team. I know that's been some controversy lately with Jaylen Brown and Derek White, and it had to not necessarily squash anything, but from the standpoint of Brown and his comments certainly weren't a knock toward Derek White getting that spot that was left when Kawhi Leonard had decided to walk out. I know it was mutual between he and the head of the men's team, not the coach, but as far as overseeing the roster in a one Grant Hill. But with the Olympics coming up, I'll spend a couple of minutes on that next week. And other than that, people, that's what I got here out in this beautiful sun. Few clouds, but right over my head. I hope it's not glaring on screen, where if you're watching on YouTube, I certainly appreciate it. And I'm not even going to put up a thumbnail. I'm just going to use this in the background, and people are going to say, wait a minute, what the hell's going on? Hopefully I'll get some clicks and generate some buzz. But I'll shut up and move on. With that being said, as always, people, another podcast just about in the books. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is that I have to say, what goes on in the world of sports. And by Monday, I'll also be out here too to record another podcast, of course, weather permitting. But from what I've seen, it looks like Monday's going to be okay. If not, there's some cover over there. But if you haven't done so, like I mentioned at the top, please subscribe, rate, and review. Throw me a few stars, write a review. Apple, Spotify, the website, JAYREELZ.com. I would sincerely appreciate it. As well as the YouTube channel, @JAYREELZ. Please subscribe there. Trying to get to the 400 mark as I trudge along here on this journey being a full-time content creator. So please, people, go ahead and do that. Also, drinkOLIPOP.com, 50% off of your order by using the promo code JAYREELZ, JAYREELZ. Go do that, because your boy gets a little bit of commission from that. So it's hot, it's summer, they got a bunch of great flavors. Buy them by the case, buy a few, buy a dozen. Please hook your boy up. I would greatly appreciate that as well. And if you want to send a question, comment, suggestion, do so at the following: on my socials, of course, on YouTube @JAYREELZ, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast, Twitter, X, JAYREELZ1, just a number. The old-fashioned way, the JAYREELZ Podcast @gmail.com, because whether you do or do not know, here's what I love to do, people. Look at this. I brought all my equipment, my camera, mic, laptop, recorder, everything, because there are no days off here, people. I still have to work. Just because I'm away from New York City and I'm visiting family and we'll be at another destination come next Thursday's podcast, and you're going to have to stay tuned to see where I'm going to be for that one. Yeah, there's no way that I got to slow down or stop. This has to keep on moving. This train has to keep on going. And like I said, as an independent, one-man operation, content creator, I can't stop. I have to put the word out there. I have to continue to grind. And with your help, please post it on social media. Share it with your friends, family, frenemies, foes. That will be a huge boost to what it is that I do, because you know I'm going to come with nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury, with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ Podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx to South Beach to South Central to South Pacific and all points beyond, peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ Podcast, on the flip, baby.